When you wake up and see a group of doctors around
Mate.
the side of your bed, it's not a good thing. It's not going to go well. I found out in front of my children that it had spread.
What more needs to be done?
So education around what stage 4 means in the end needs to happen. And maybe stage 4 needs to be removed as a terminology.
Welcome back to another episode of the Black Women Rising podcast. Cheryl is a Black Women Rising member and she is living with stage 4 endocrine cancer. And she runs multiple projects in the cancer community, all aimed at inspiring people to move forward with their cancer diagnosis. Cheryl, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, you've been a member with us for such a long time now. I mean, how many years has it been?
2019.
2019.
At the end of 2019, somebody told me about you, and then I met you at an event.
Yeah.
Spoke to you, plucked up the courage, spoke to you, and you told me to come along on that Saturday morning.
Oh, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with cancer?
So I was diagnosed with stage 4 endocrine cancer, neuroendocrine cancer, back in July 2017, but that was after 8 years of going to the GP, back and forth, A&E, on the floor, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I had the diagnosis in July through biopsy, and it confirmed it had already spread to the liver.
Okay.
So that's where my journey began.
How long did it take for you to be diagnosed? Because I remember you'd been messed about a bit, hadn't you?
About 8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
Of symptoms.
8 years of what looked like IBS, but I told them I was over 40. There's no way you develop IBS after 40. So it can't be IBS. Pain in the tummy at night, endless bowel movements. It was just back and forth and relentless.
Yeah. And when you were told that it was at stage 4, what did that feel like? Like, what was that? What did that feel like to you?
That was scary because I actually found out by accident. So I'd been moved from one hospital to the other who specialised. And when I got there, they said, we need to talk about the tumours in your tummy. So I'm like, what are you talking about? I've come here about the tumours in my liver. They said, no, that's where it's spread to.
Wow.
So even the transfer of information wasn't given to me.
Wow.
I found out in front of my children that it had spread.
What did you do? I always like to talk about like having a cancer diagnosis. That we were people before that, because I think especially when you're doing things publicly, people like to sort of think of you as that person who's got cancer now and this is your life.
They start your journey there.
Yeah, they start on your cancer journey, but we were people before cancer. Who was Cheryl before cancer?
Wow, so I was a mother of 2 grown sons.
Yeah.
I also worked in education with 6th form students.
Yeah.
I just literally finished my 3-year degree.
Yeah.
As you know, in psychosocial studies. And I was diagnosed at that point. So I was all over the place, running to work, running to uni, minding my own business with my adult children, looking after my parents.
Wow.
I was just jack of everything, really.
Yeah. And what about health-wise? Were you, able to do things? I know we're going to talk a bit about your projects that you do now, but active-wise,
I was very active.
Yeah.
Very active. I mean, as a younger woman, especially in my 20s, I used to hit the gym. I was an absolute gym person. I used to keep myself fit. As you know, go raving in
I was going to say, I know you're a dancer as well, I've seen
Friday,
your moves at the parties.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was missing. That was my life. And then things changed. I had to slow down a bit. But I didn't know why I had to slow down. That makes sense.
What significant things changed after cancer? Because that's what I really like to know is we were these people beforehand, we had these lives, and then cancer comes in, absolutely devastating. What was life like that after you heard those words?
It changed forever because I then realised I'd have to impart that information to my children. Yes, they're adults, but they're still your children. And I didn't know how to do that. Believe it or not, people would think, oh, they're adults, you just tell them. It took me 6
Doesn't
weeks.
matter.
It took me 6 weeks. I needed to gather my information, find out what they could do or couldn't do, and then go to them, because I know exactly what my sons are like. They will, you know, really get into the nitty-gritty.
And what was their reaction?
Shock. I could see the shock in both their faces, but in my youngest son, I could see like utter devastation. And my oldest one, I could see in his eyes that I've got you, bro, I've got you. I could feel him pick him up with his eyes. It was just really, really weird.
Yeah.
But I saw that connection between them automatically, like we've got to look after each other and mum.
What, like, I always talk about, we talk about it a lot because, you know, obviously it happens a lot when people are diagnosed at stage 4, right? What goes through your mind when you're told that you've got terminal cancer?
You think you're going to die, but the only thing is at stage 4, they kind of break it down into 2 sections. So you're either stage 4 and you're going to live with the cancer, or you're stage 4 and you could be terminal. So I've been diagnosed as having an incurable cancer, but I could live with it as long as I take the treatment or the surgery. I could live with it.
Yeah. And that's very different for all different people across the stage 4.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's important to have, I suppose, and speak about all the different cancer types on, you know, this kind of
200 plus.
There's so many different, you know, and I think there's so much emphasis a lot of the time on breast, but actually there are different cancers out there, and all the different stages mean different things for different people, right? And what is life like for you now?
Very different. I don't think of, put it this way, I think about dying, we all do. We're human beings. But I don't think about cancer as being the one that actually takes me out. I think it'll be something else. I think it'll be like I'm an old woman trying to go to a dance, break my leg, get a clot, then I die, have a heart attack. I don't focus on, I don't wake up thinking, I've got cancer, oh my God, what am I going to do? And sing that song every day. I don't. I play a different song. Marvin Gaye, I play something else in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
People think you do because of what you do, but no.
I think as black women as well, like, there is this thing that we go through as well where people say, you don't look like what you go through. You know, you've walked in today on set and whatever, and everyone's like, you look amazing, you look great, right? I am going to say your age because I think that you look incredible for your age, but you're 55.
No. Put one more on it.
No!
I'm 57 in April.
What? No way.
I'm 57
But you
next
look
April.
absolutely incredible. But as black women, there's this thing that we go through with ageism, right? Where they're like, you don't look your age.
Yeah.
And you don't look like what you go through. So often, many times, people are misdiagnosed or told, you know what, I don't think that. Do you think that that played a part in what you've gone through? And how do you think that plays out across the whole of the black community, really? Especially like what we see as, you know, members of Black Women Rising and people coming through the doors.
Yeah. I think it's really hard, you're right. Because I remember being in A&E and saying, I'm in extreme pain.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to die, and I was ignored. They kept, oh, we've given you morphine, you should be okay. I'm telling you, this pain, whatever it is going to kill me. And they weren't listening.
Yeah.
So they see that
I know.
youth in you and think, you're a young woman, come on, take 2 painkillers and go home. But it's not like that. So I think we get misdiagnosed because of what people visually see. You look well, you walk through the door, you must be well. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What has joining Black Women Rising meant to you?
Oh my gosh. It means the absolute world. And I really mean that. I'm not just saying it. I've got one sister, and I feel like I've now got a whole collaborative of sisters. Yeah. Different shades, different races. You know, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
It means the world because I've never ever joined a support group before.
Yeah.
So it's my first time.
That's crazy that you're saying you've not joined a support group, because I'm about to talk about your support groups. Now, Cheryl runs 2 amazing initiatives in the cancer community. So you've got Sex and Intimacy Project.
Yes.
And then you've got the Cancer Creativity Project as well, which we were able to give a small grant to earlier this year. And that's exactly the type of things that Black Women Rising wants to do, is to be able to support a lot of other grassroots organisations coming up. Can you talk about the Sex and Intimacy Project? Because I think that is a subject a lot of people do not talk about. I want to get into it.
Good. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, what is that about? What made you set it up?
I'll tell you why. Back in 2019, I met someone.
Yeah.
They had cancer too.
Yeah.
And we got talking once, and somebody came to visit him.
Yeah.
Asked them how they were. They were terminally ill at this stage, and they said, how's your sex life? And he could not believe that someone had the audacity to come to a terminally ill person and say, how's your sex life? And I said, you know what? What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
You're still here.
Yeah.
You're still a human being.
Yeah.
And then obviously I had my surgery, which impacts my abdomen.
Yeah.
And causes pain and discomfort. And no one ever spoke to me about how I'd navigate that space again.
Of course.
Because you just think, if somebody's on top of me, I'm going to open up.
Yeah.
You just think the worst.
Of course you do.
So that's what got me into it. And then I met the fabulous Sarah.
Yeah.
Who were eventually partnered with by Macmillan.
It's such an important topic, because even I obviously I had cancer, 30, I was, just about to turn 31. I was single, not had children. And then obviously because of the family history, I was obviously told, that the best course of treatment for me after chemo was to take my breasts off. And I just remember there was just so much feelings attached to it that by the time I ended up getting to the end of my cancer, I know it's going to sound sad what I was about to say, but I remember I had no hair in my head. I'd put on 2 stone. I had both of my breasts were gone and being reconstructed, so they didn't even look like my own. My periods had stopped, and I remember one of the first things in my mind I was like, no one's going to want me.
Oh wow!
And I never thought I would ever feel those feelings of being desired ever and again. But most of all, when my friends tried to ask me about it, no, don't worry, Leanne, you'll be fine, and and I was like, no, I can't show anybody this body. Like, I can't show that.
Okay.
And I remember feeling so ashamed. Shame. So, and then obviously setting up Black Women Rising, I've realised that so many other women and girls and whatever age feel exactly the same. How are you tackling that? But are people coming to these sessions and engaging?
Well, funny enough, people do come to the session.
I love it.
They slide into our DMs.
Oh.
They slide into our email.
Yeah.
We don't care how they slide in. Yeah. As long as they come. Yeah. And we shout about it. So, for instance, today I've got a talk with a university with 600 student nurses to educate them on the importance of speaking to people about sex and intimacy. Incredible. Despite their chronic illness. It doesn't even have to be cancer. Give them the opportunity to open that door, because sometimes somebody just wants you to say this and they take that hook and run with it. Yeah. But what are the top things that you're hearing from people that they're going through that they're finding difficult in their sex and intimacy journey after cancer? I'm really intrigued to know. I would say the key thing are partners. People don't know how to communicate with their partner post-cancer. Yeah, that is true. And vice versa. Yeah. People think that the person is now a delicate egg. Yeah. They don't want to hurt them. And you can understand where that comes from. They shut each other down. Yeah. And they don't know how to start again. And they think they have to have the same sex life they had pre-cancer. Yeah, and that's not true. Yeah. You might just need to find other avenues. But I hear it all. Like, I'm just going to be controversial because, but in a way, controversial in a way that's quite sad because, as I'm being at an event and I remember, a woman saying that her husband turned around and said, I don't like your body anymore. Yeah. And I know that stuff is happening, I know that stuff is happening, and it's like, how do you deal with that? Like, I don't know how I could deal with that. You're going through something that's already taking away and stripping you of everything, especially as women, like society says makes you a woman or a man in certain circumstances, depending on the cancer that you have. But then you're also being told this by somebody who you're is meant to be like your life partner or whatever. Like, how do people deal with that? How do you bring them back to their confidence after that? It's not easy, and it's not an overnight process. So you have to get them to kind of think about the relationship they had with that person before cancer. What was it like? How did you communicate? What sort of sex did you have? And was this person always like this? You just didn't choose to acknowledge it. That's the other thing. We have a lot of narcissists around. I know. Preach. So, but it's the truth. Yeah. And then you can look at where you are now and decide, do you even want to be intimate with this person again? Yeah. Do you want the relationship? There are a lot of things you need to explore, but the best thing is don't wait until you're in the bedroom or anywhere in a sexual position to ask the person, do you still find me attractive? That's not the space and the time. Do it away from that pressure.
Yeah.
Do it where you're being friends and maybe just dating each other again.
Yeah. So psychologically, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's
you
a
might
lot
need
of
therapy
process
as well.
Yeah, therapy is a huge thing. I do know that with
Couple
a lot
therapy,
of people.
on your own, you might need it.
Yeah. And what about the cancer creativity? Tell me about that.
Well, that was a lockdown
Yeah.
shock. That came when everyone else was just locked in. I thought, right, yes, I'm not on my own anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not locked away by myself. Everyone's joining me. So what are we going to do for the people that feel especially vulnerable?
Yeah.
People like myself that used to come to your support group, so used to that support. What are we going to do? Locked away from everything. So we took it online.
Yeah.
And I decided to look at things like flowers in my garden, which was one thing. But the main thing was keeping fit.
Yeah.
So exercise, mindfulness. And I know a few people in the community that were willing to do it for me. And that's what I did. And put out an Eventbrite for people to attend who had cancer, and people who were looking after someone who had a diagnosis or have one.
Yeah, I love that. And you have how many, what other programs? You do fitness, you got flowers. What else was you doing? You was doing quite a lot of things.
Mindfulness was another one. So there was a sort of like a 12-week program where we did a bit of everything. So I have a son who's also a chef.
Yes, yeah.
So we did cookery, we did baking, we made Christmas decorations from nature. So I told people to start collecting things from the park, like leaves and stuff in the autumn. We sprayed them, we made wreaths, we did all sorts. Yeah. So it was a 12-week program of a bit of everything.
Yeah. We are lucky enough to be joined by our second guest. We've got the wonderful Judith Nepital, who is diagnosed with stage 4 bile duct cancer and who runs the amazing organisation From Me to You, Art of Survival. And she joins us today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course.
It's amazing to be here, guys.
Both of you, I mean, so inspiring and incredible. Women, you know, women of colour, like myself, running organisations and projects to help others. Can we hear a bit about your story, Judith? Because whenever I read your story, it's such a rarity what happened to you.
Yeah, for sure. Where do we start? Let's start at the beginning. That would be a really great place, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say it in around 2018. I think my story, we'll go back. Sorry about that, guys. Oh. In about 2015, I started to have symptoms. My stomach became bloated. I was constantly tired, fatigued. I went back and forth to the doctors, from the doctors to the GP. It was a little bit like table tennis. I went from one to the other constantly. In around 2018, I broke down in a consultation with my consultant and basically said, look, can you do anything to help me? I don't feel well, something's wrong, I just don't know what. And at that point, he kind of like said, okay, look, we're going to operate and have a look. But that was 3 years of going back and forth and back and forth. Anyway, they operated on the 1st of July 2018. And I want to make it absolutely clear that at no point was cancer ever mentioned.
Of course.
And I kind of remember coming round, and when I came round, there were loads of doctors around my bed. And if you've been to hospital, if you know the whole hospital scenario, what you do know is that when you wake up and see a group of doctors around the side of your bed, it's not a good thing. It's not going to go well. So at that point, they basically said to me, look, we're really sorry, but you have cancer. And I remember thinking, okay, well, what do we do? Where do we go from here? You know, I like to think that I'm quite optimistic, and I'm one of those people that it's glass half full rather than half empty. So already in my head, I was kind of thinking, there has to be a plan here, you know. So what do we do? And they said to me, we're really sorry, But basically there is no plan. And what we suggest is that you go home and you prepare to die. Say your goodbyes. So, being the type of person that I am, I was like, well, no, there has to be, you know, an alternative. This isn't how it goes.
Absolutely.
And they looked at me and they said, well, we're really sorry, but on this occasion, it is. And what I remember really vividly was my daughter. She was 18, she was at her first year of uni, and I'm a single mum. And I remember thinking in my mind, that's not an option. You don't get to tell me that I'm going to die and leave my daughter at 18. So kind of like from that point onwards, I think those who know me will say the shutters went down and I made a decision that I was coming out.
Yeah.
You know. And I'd like to say that it was simple from that point onwards, but it wasn't.
Of course.
But I did come out of hospital. And I have to say that I owe my life in part to my daughter, who is, at that point I realised, isn't actually that quite different to me.
Yeah.
She doesn't take no very well either. And she forged a way out of that hospital for me.
Yeah.
And that was the start of From Me to You. And I'll tell you why that was significantly the start. It was because at that point, I was not given an option. There was no option. There was no second road. You know, there was no conversation. Yeah. I was told, and I believe that nobody other than God above has the right to tell somebody else when your life is over. That's a choice. You know, we might not always be in control of that choice, but it is a choice. And for me, at that point, there was no one there to hold my hand through that choice, other than my daughter.
Wow. And
I kind of felt that if, for somebody like myself, who, as we can see, I'm not really that shy. I like to pretend I am, but I'm not. Well, that's okay, because I have a voice. And I had an advocate, a very strong advocate, my daughter. But what about those of us in the community who do not have that voice?
No.
Then there is that whole issue of power and privilege going on in the room. What about them? And that scared me. It also really saddened me to think that there were other women, other men, children, going through what I was going through, but they didn't have anybody to voice what their concerns were. So that was the start From Me to You.
I'm going to get into From Me to You, I think, but taking the organisation aside, you are a woman who's just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and being told effectively that you're going to die. Emotionally, what did that do to you?
If I'm honest, it's not actually a conversation I've had very often. Yeah. I'm very much a person that likes to move forward.
Yeah, I can tell you're very much deer in the headlights. That's it. I'm on a cause.
Yeah. I try not to have that conversation because I'm a great believer in let's deal with what we can change, not what we can't. Yeah. You know, you can only stay in that moment for so long, and then you have to start looking for ways out. So it's not about, for me, it was never about staying where I was. It was about where was I going to. Yeah. And emotionally, all I can say to you is that I'm not the same person. Yeah. You know, 5 years ago, I'd like to say that I was, you know, very, what's the word? I don't know, that I had a vision. I knew all of this, you know, that it was going to be okay at the end. I wasn't like that. I was very much somebody that liked to go out the weekends, you know. Yeah. If you gave me an easy option, I definitely was taking that. You know, but I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I don't laugh as easily. I don't cry as easily either. Emotionally, I'm a completely different person.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it does.
It definitely changes you,
challenge.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Definitely a challenge.
You spoke so much about just getting strength from your daughter, but you also spoke about the fact that actually that was the one person that you could turn to. And I speak about it so often, hence why I think Black Women Rising is as popular as it is because people just don't have people. And in the toughest time of your life is when you realised who is actually there and who's not. And I know I went through that. It was the toughest thing. Did you find that that was a lot around you as well? And how do you cope with that?
Look, I think one of the biggest challenges within our community as well is, and there are numerous challenges, you know, let's be real.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
You know, as strong Black women, one of our challenges is that we don't talk about the things that are actually innately going on inside. You know, we say, how are you today? I'm good, you know,
Yeah.
but actually the whole house is falling down.
Yeah.
Well, I'm good, you know. And that's what we do. We get on with it. It's innately in us. We've been taught from day one that you're strong. You don't cry about things, really. You process and you move forward. So that in itself is a challenge. When you combine that with the whole taboo of cancer, you know, that it's not something you tell people about, you know, and that whole thing, the silence that we, I'm not only going to say that we give, but that we receive, you know, and we allow that. But the problem with that is that while we sit in silence, we are dying daily. And we're not having the uncomfortable, and I'm a great believer in that, the uncomfortable conversations, as in why are we not talking about it, you know.
And I think that is a reason why a lot of people do find themselves lonely after you've had a cancer diagnosis in our communities, because other people don't want to be faced with dealing with that news, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's such a selfish thing, but I had so many people after my diagnosis say, I didn't know how to deal with it. It's not something I know of. And I think that is what you've just said, right? Why are we not having conversations about it? Because then that can get rid of some of the awkwardness around the...
Absolutely. I mean, one of the main conversations that and this is something that I would like to address with the community as well, is that I had a lot of people coming to me and saying to me, should we do your bucket list? You know,
oh my God.
Should we do a bucket list? Should we,
oh my God.
What do you want to do? And well, actually, it's
I want to live.
I know, yeah, that's the line.
Yeah.
I want to live. Are you going to help me to live?
Yeah.
And what really irritated me, and I've got to say this, I'm on a roll now.
Go for it.
What really irritated me was the fact that people wanted to do or wanted to be there in the way that they wanted to be there.
I always talk about this.
And that is not what you need or what you want.
I always talk about that
you
all
know,
the time. Yeah.
I think people need to understand that all right, I'm going to say this really coldly. I don't need your help to die. Yeah, I can die all by myself.
Yeah.
Right? But I do need your help to live. So rather than coming and sitting with me and crying, how about getting on a laptop and doing a bit of research?
Yeah.
Yeah? Help me to live. And I think that's what we need to do as a community, understanding that cancer is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
And you can help in that process to live, but it's not going to be by sitting by the edge of the bed crying. That's not helping anybody.
Well, I think that leads us nicely into your amazing organisation that you set up. Tell us about it.
Thank you. May I say as well, can I commend everybody here? Because these beautiful ladies have set up amazing organisations that are taking us so forward and actually led the way for me. So I pay homage.
Thank you.
What I would like to say about from me to you is we were set up, and I think those of you can hear me already, that I have very strong convictions of, you know, about what I feel we needed from my perspective. And what we needed was advocacy from my perspective. What we needed was to be in control more so of the information that we have access to. What we needed to do more so was to be encouraged to access avenues that we are not currently accessing. How do we do that? So from me to you, it's very much an organisation that it's about, you know, there's a saying, God helps those who helps themselves. Well, we believe in helping ourselves, right? So we basically run bi-weekly groups for everybody, you know, to have the conversation about cancer. We also, hopefully by doing that, we've created partly a community, because what we want within our community is to talk.
Absolutely.
You know, and these need to be open and honest conversations between men, women and children.
Of course.
You know, we need to educate each other, because there's a lot of education out there, you know, and we need to be imparting that to each other. So we started that off. We also, through that, have realised that there are various other avenues, carers, you know, that have a lot of information. And, you know, especially in relation to men, a lot of, you know, women do a lot of the navigating of healthcare. Absolutely. So generally the men come, but the women are there to hold their hands, and they do that. So we've got carers, we've got men, and which is really unusual, but in our group, our men seem to do a lot of talking, don't they?
I love it,
they
though.
love to talk.
They tend to do a lot of talking about.
Good.
Yeah, they've got their own thing now. We also deal with advocacy, which we advocate on behalf of our members. I'm passionate about that.
Yeah, that is definitely work you should be doing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely passionate about that, because I feel that, and I've said this to you before, I think I've had the conversation with both of you. There is an issue with inequality, which we know about. There is an issue with power and privilege, and unfortunately we don't always know how to navigate that conversation, nor do others institutions know how to navigate that conversation with us. So there's education that we believe in on both sides. They're all things that I'm passionate about, and gratefully from me to you is going in all of those directions, as are other organisations like your own, you know. So I'm just grateful that we're all kind of like working to the same, the same beat, you know, different directions, but we're all listening to the same beat, and we're all moving towards the same goal, and that makes us pretty powerful.
We are really powerful, and I say all the time to everyone, you know, the more organisations there are, and the more people pushing the communities where they have them, you know, we're all, look how funny it is. We're sitting here with organisations, right? Cheryl's got 2, yeah? She's got 2 cancer-related organisations. And we've got, so that's 4 between us. But we've all got our own sets of communities. So no one's trying to steal anyone's participants. No one, you know, and unfortunately, amongst the grassroots community, whether you're white, black, indifferent, whatever, lots of the grassroots communities in whatever field you are believe that there's this, they have a hero complex and this feeling of wanting to be the only one. We was having this conversation the other day.
Yeah, we were.
About the egos, unfortunately, in the cancer community that exist amongst grassroots organisations, where people set things up and want to be seen as the hero. What did we say? None of us can be heroes, because there's people dying, and our people are dying, and they're at an alarming rate, and things like that. And I think the passion and the beauty of it here is for women who have set up their own thing, and we have our own sets of communities, but we can come together like this with all of our separate things in the way we do, learn from each other, but all have this one common denominator. Spread awareness of cancer within our organisations, and have the equal access to cancer care like everybody else, because that is the problem, right?
Can I applaud you on that? I think, you know, everything you've just said, we pay homage. And I think what is also powerful about this space, this doesn't just sit with cancer.
No.
This sits with the fact of, we have 3 black women here.
Yes.
And you know what? We are finished with that whole mantra that we do not embrace each other, that we do not love each other. and that we do not move forward together, because that was then.
Yeah.
This is now, and we are all
Different
about
generation.
embracing.
Yeah, we
are
are.
all about moving forward and empowering each other.
Yeah.
And dare I say it, this is a harsh thing to say, but those who cannot move to that beat,
Yeah.
then really there is no room.
There's no room. And also what I've learned, funnily enough, Judith, is they don't last.
No.
Because unfortunately, that's not what charitable work and community work is about. You know, and people can really see it from a mile away. If you've not got the right intentions, you know, with all of this stuff, it won't last, because
It will seep out. It will seep out.
It will seep out, but not only that, like, the shit you have to deal with, we have to deal with, or the things that we see on a regular basis, it's not pretty, it's not great. So you realise that it's hard, and the only thing that keeps you in doing that is the passion.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And you know, like for me, a question to both of you. You know, you've got your own organisations. You've spoke about that and empowering everybody. But what does life look like to you now? I'm going to come to you, Cheryl. Like, what does life look like to you now?
Life can be very challenging at times, but it's also very beautiful, because I occupy a space that I don't recognise pre-cancer. So literally, it could be a combination of feeling really exhausted with the multiple conditions, but yet it can be really invigorating and really refreshing and really enlightening and embracing, and I love it. So there's two sides to it.
Yeah.
But I try not to stay in the side that's down, if that makes sense. But you've got to understand that it exists.
Of course
You
it
can't
does.
ignore it.
No.
You ignore it to your detriment.
Yeah, but as well, like, life is just like that, though, isn't it? It's like the ups, the downs. You're entitled to feel all the feels.
But not everybody will allow you to do that.
No, I know that. That's why you have to find
You
your
had
safe
cancer,
spaces.
you're okay now.
Of course.
But that's not me. I'm living with it, thank
I know.
you.
Yeah.
And even if you did have it, you still have that process. You still have those scans. You still have those memories. It's not erased because you've been treated.
I say that all the time. I cannot compare being in remission. I can't compare myself to both of you as stage 4 cancer patients. But what I can say to you is it's a life sentence once you've been told those words, because the worry just never goes. But not only that, you know, there's so many other challenges. You know, there's so much challenges with that. So yeah, I can't compare, but in a way it is. I think when you hear those words, your life is never the same again. Yeah. And that's regardless of who you are. What about yourself, Judith? What does life look like to you?
If I'm honest, I think you can compare, because like you've just said, the word cancer never leaves you.
No.
You know, whatever you do. But I'm going to try and be honest. It's really hard because your whole life changes. You lose friends, family, relationships, you know, because cancer makes everything very crystal clear, what's important and what's not.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, what it also does, and what it's done for me, it's almost given me a sense of freedom. Freedom to be my most authentic self.
Yeah, I love that.
And actually, the freedom to know what's really important. And the privilege to help other people. So yeah, as much as it's painful, I embrace it. And I have to say, dare I say it, maybe I'm a better person. You know, as a result of it. I know some people find that really weird, but I think you'll understand it.
Yeah, it's how you feel. And most people I speak to say the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stigma around the word stage 4, particularly when people hear that. But also I'm very aware that amongst the stage 4 community, and regardless of whatever diagnosis you have, there isn't enough resources and help. You know, this is not just for our communities, it's in general. Like, what more needs to be done?
I think education around what stage 4 means. You've got stage 4, an incurable cancer. We can treat you and you can live as long as you can. and you've got stage 4 terminally ill, where they've tried everything and literally they can't help anymore. So education around what stage 4 means in the end needs to happen. And maybe stage 4 needs to be removed as a terminology.
Yeah,
it's very brutal and misunderstood.
It's very misunderstood. I agree with that. Yeah, I really do. Because I do know there is different levels to stage 4.
For different cancers.
For different cancers. And also, but just where you're at on your stage 4 journey. And there's some people now that we know that are living with no trace of cancer in their bodies, and they're still classed as stage 4.
That's right.
Like, where do we go with that? Especially because the drugs and the treatment, we have to be honest, have got so much better over the years that actually people are living with stage 4 cancer a lot longer. You know, it doesn't mean it's gone, but it's still there. But where does the terminology go? And what about just generically, like, people having that stigma of when they are diagnosed with stage 4, and that automatic feeling like, you know, what a lot of women describe to me is like, I'm going to die, you know, and you're going to die, this person's going to die, like you said, let me do my bucket list and whatever. How do we tackle that?
I think, like Cheryl just said, I think the main thing about this is education. It's something I bang on about a lot. And it's not just about education physically. You know, we're talking about where your mindset is. Because I think sometimes people really don't understand how important a part of the battle that is.
Yeah.
You know, what you believe, I strongly believe, is what you believe will be.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not taken away from what the medical professions say in relation to a diagnosis. But I also like to think that we are the authors of our own stories. And I think we need to start taking more of control of our own story, our own healthcare, and how we navigate that.
Yeah,
you know,
same.
It's an important process, and we need to start getting involved in it, because that can mean life or death.
Yeah, it's very true. They say the mind is everything as well, right? With this whole thing. My last question to both of you: what would you say to anyone who has just been newly diagnosed with stage 4 cancer? You've spoken so much about strength and how you've moved on and how you live and find the joy, but you also know about when you were first told and the shock and the horror that comes with that. What advice would you give someone who's just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer?
I would say to take your time, really understand what you've been diagnosed with, what that means for you, and what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
Don't Dr. Google it. You
Yeah.
can research, but be careful in the beginning, because you don't know enough about the condition or the treatment that's going to be presented to you to make a decision. So just sit and digest, think about what you need to do, what you need to say, where you need to be, who you need to be around. That's important. Take your time. And reach out if you need a support group. Don't sit there and think, I don't need this. Try it.
I'm going to second what you said. I think support groups are immensely important because they give you options. They also allow you to connect with people who have probably walked similar, if not the same path, right? And what I would also say is slightly, knowledge is power, right? So obviously you'll go to the medical profession, you will have an opinion, but I always like to say this: if you have a car and you love your car, if it breaks down, you don't just go to one garage, right?
Yeah.
You go to 5.
Yeah.
There is a politeness in us
Yeah.
that we just go to the one person and they say this is gospel and we believe it.
I love that. I love
well,
what you've just said. Yeah.
Go to 5 different, go to 10 if it makes you at peace.
Yeah.
It's all about choice, so take it.
Yeah. Agreed. Right, I'm going to do one last thing with you ladies, okay? I've brought my special cards with me, okay? And I want you to pick one. And you can choose. So you can pick a statement or an affirmation. These are my favourite cards, all right? They're all newly shuffled. So you're just going to pick one from the top. What do you want? A statement or affirmation?
Affirmation, please.
Okay. You can take one out of there. What do you want, Judith?
I'm going to go for statement.
Okay, I love it. Okay.
Thank you.
Just take the first one. Does that relate to you in any way?
Yes, it
Okay, read
does.
it out and let me know.
I am unapologetically myself, and I've always been that way.
Okay, you're unapologetic yourself, and you've always been that way. Okay. All right.
I'm just worse now.
I love it. I love it.
I love
Judith.
that. I don't know what this means. I can release ancient pain simply by feeling it.
Well, that's what we were talking today, right?
Right.
We were saying that today.
Wow.
Allowing yourself to kind of feel all the feels. And sometimes, Judith, as well, like I was talking about that, funny enough, I got that cards a couple of weeks back, right?
Oh,
When we
okay.
was doing it in the office, and I found these cards again, and I was like, I'm going to use them. And I that was the card I picked out of the pack. And do you know what? I was sitting there and I was like, sometimes when we're on the rat race, especially with our organisations, we're so go, 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 that sometimes we even forget about our diagnosis. Sometimes I go around and I talk and I'm like, oh shit, I've had breast cancer too. Do you know what I mean? And I'm there going, talking and fighting, and I'm like, I've also been through it as well. So, but sometimes there's parts of me that because I'm trying to play a role and do what I need to do, I do forget about that. Yeah. And I go back and then I feel something very different. So I felt like that card kind of related to me after a couple of days. I was like, yeah, well, those are your cards to keep, guys. Ooh, so alongside your Palmer's goodie bags, those are your cards to keep. And I just want to say a massive thank you to Judith and Cheryl for coming on and talking to me about all things stage 4 cancer, but also their amazing organisations. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you. We pay homage.
Oh, thank you.